Well, excellent. First order of business was to let everybody know that this is being recorded. So fair warning. My name is Margaret Angel, and I am the head of partnerships and strategic initiatives at the Roux Institute. And it is my real pleasure to welcome everybody to our panel today, which we've titled Women Who Empower Maine, or Women Who Empower Me, whichever one you prefer. And this panel is part of our Roux Institute speaker series, Our Work, Our People, Our Community. And it's really an effort by our team to open up the Roux Institute to the public, to get them to meet who's involved here and what we're doing, and really touch on all of the areas of research, learning, and entrepreneurship that we value here at the Roux Institute. And this is a special one for me. We did a panel similar to this last year, really highlighting women who have distinguished themselves in the fields that we are focused on here at Roux. And so I'm delighted to have three panelists with us. I'm going to start with little introductions and then try and ask them a few prompting questions leading to a conversation. And then eventually we'll start to field some questions from the chat. I wanted to start with just a little bit of context here, which is if you want to view all four of us, view it in the speaker mode so you can see all the panelists. And feel free to eat lunch. It is lunch hour and we cannot see you. So we want you to sit back, enjoy your hour with us. I am going to be using the chat function here. So I find that it's much more interesting when everybody participates, and an hour of Zoom can get a little old. So be ready to answer some questions on that we ask the audience here over chat. All right, so here are the wonderful three women on our panel. Helkenberg is the founder and CEO of Hey Freya, a women's health startup here that is part of the founder residency at the Roux Institute. Helken has been a multi-time CEO and founder, and we're thrilled to have her here. She works out of the Roux Institute, and she's added a lot of life to our community here. Second panelist is Alicia Jalbert, who is the coordinator of computer science programs at Lewiston Public Schools, and recently became a student in the MS in Data Science program at the Roux Institute. We're thrilled that she decided to join us as a student, as well as a very important colleague and collaborator in our efforts to promote computer science education across the state. And then our third panelist is Melanie Torrey, who's the Director of Data Visualization Research at the Roux Institute. Melanie is originally from Canada, but came to us immediately before coming to the Roux Institute, was the Director of Research at Tableau in California. And we consider ourselves incredibly lucky and fortunate that Melanie chose to begin to build this field of data visualization out of the Roux Institute. So those are their professional highlights, but want to start with a little bit of a softball question. And everybody in the audience, I want you to answer along with these ladies. What is your walk-on song? We want to get a little taste of your personality here. And so I want each of you to tell me what your walk-on song is, and we can start to feel the vibes.
I don't mind going first. So welcome everyone, super excited for this talk today. I took a poll in my household about what the song should be. And I should probably disclose that the average age of the poll takers was about 5 years old. So the selected song was It's Raining Tacos by Party Grip, if anyone's ever been so lucky as to hear this song. So yeah, that would be my walk-on song.
I love that. I didn't think about doing a poll, but when I graduated high school, we walked to I Was Born in a Small Town. And that one stuck with me because it reminds me that no matter where you come from, you can do great things. So I Was Born in a Small Town is my walk-on song.
And mine would be Nina Simone's Feeling Good, that 15, 30-second intro where the horns come in. It's like, yes, we can do this.
Awesome. I love it. And I'm not seeing any chat, so you all can begin to participate too. So now let's get down to business. What was your aha moment that of what you wanted, how you knew you wanted to be in the field you're in? And I'll start with Melanie.
Okay. I didn't know what field I wanted to be in. I started out undergrad as a biology major. And so and along the way, I did a bunch of co-ops. So I worked in various wet labs as a technician. And after at least, almost more than a year of experience as a wet lab technician, I was realizing that much as I was totally fascinated by biology and theory, I wasn't really thrilled with the day-to-day work in a wet lab. But what I did really, really love is once I had my data and I was, sitting at the computer and making charts and analyzing it and writing up reports and sharing those reports with others. And I guess that's what made me realize data analytics was the place to be, and I needed to make a switch.
Melanie, will you pick the next person?
All right, I pick Helkin.
Great. I'd have to say there wasn't one singular aha. I feel like it's been a series of them over many years. I feel like I've been lucky enough to just sit back and observe what I was doing and what I enjoyed the most, and also what I felt I was the best at. And it's been an evolution, right? I've taken on one project or initiative, learned something from it, and built towards the next. So for me, it's been collaboration of friends and colleagues and their input on what they see that, my strengths are, as well as my own observations. And right now, what I'm doing has been a longstanding dream of mine, is to launch a company specifically to benefit women. I have spent most of my career in tech. It's a very male-dominated field. And I feel like there is, simply by sheer fact of there's so few women launching companies in this field, there's a lot of ideas missing that need to be realized. So I took it upon myself to find one I'm really passionate about and bring that to life. And my hope is then to, hold the door open for many other women to learn from the experience and collaborating on it and make it easier for them to do the same. Alicia?
And similar to Helkin, I have aha moments all the time, and mine are in the form of, oh, well, I can do this, but not only can I do this, I can see how this skill or thing will help others. And so I had this when a professor nudged me towards an education class in college, or when a departing tech director said, you're a great trainer and you'll figure out the plugs and wires along the way. Or when Jason Judd of Educate Maine said, well, of course you should run for Maine Computer Science Teachers Association office. And I keep having these moments where once I get in the space, I'm like, oh, okay, let's do this. Let's go.
I love that. And all three of you, it's so interesting because you describe your fields maybe differently than what we, or what you're doing is different from what we would do in the sort of headline. So I do want to dig into what you're each doing right now, because it is so interesting. And Helkin, maybe you could start with, tell us more about Hey Freya and what you're trying to do, and how you're building your team to do it.
Sure. So for me as a woman in tech, I've had to be really strategic for most of my career about where I step and where I go. And I've had to get kind of creative to gain the skill sets that I really want to have. So a lot of that was like the hard work needed to get to where I am right now. And this particular company has been born from hundreds of conversations with women over many years, hearing their stories and, researching what was in the market and what's missing. And women's health has recently attracted more funding than it has in the past, which is a great thing. That said, the majority of the funding is still going to fertility-based issues. So that only speaks to a small portion of women, and women's health is so much more than fertility. I mean, menstruation itself matters, whether you're intending to conceive or not. There's also many other factors to our health, and women's health journeys in particular seem to be difficult, right? They feel like they get they don't get answers that they need, or they get referred to a bunch of specialists and they feel time pressure. They feel like no one's synthesizing the information for them. And they feel like it's just taking a lot of time to get an outcome for improvement. And sometimes they don't even get that outcome. So for me, someone who is passionate about building companies to solve problems, I've just listened really intently and carefully to what I'm hearing. And this is a customer-focused company. So right now, we're really chasing the gap that women are experiencing and understanding their own bodies and understanding their own health and trying to deliver direct-to-consumer solutions. So we're targeting tech, something you can have in your hand, you can use every day, and reach out to a community. We're also exploring supplements. There's actually quite a few basic health needs that can get addressed by legitimately well-created supplements that can raise your baseline health. And then we're also exploring direct-to-consumer testing that short circuits this really laborious process of trying to find the right doctor and get the right lab assigned to you. So it's a bigger vision, and we're really excited to get started. And as far as creating the team, it's been really amazing. I feel like the idea has just been put out into the universe, and I'm finding all these people coming and wanting to collaborate and wanting to help out and just see this realized. Like I have yet to leave a conversation with a woman and men and non-binary folk who are just like, this needs to happen. We want to see this in the market. And that kind of energy is frankly just so inspiring, and it just makes you want to double down and go faster and really make sure to deliver what people are looking for.
Thanks. And Alicia, I think similarly, you built something from an idea and from a series of conversations that people saw a need for something. Your journey at Lewiston has been fascinating. Can you tell us about what you've built there?
Yeah, so Lewiston has one of the state's only K-12 computer science pathways. And what that means for Lewiston is that now every student in grades K through 8 receives at least a trimester's worth of computer science instruction during the school day. Computer science, it's not something you have to go after school for or for a summer camp. You're getting it as a regular part of your education. And then we're happy to announce this year at 9/12, we have 3 new computer science courses for high school students. This is a huge shift from not even 4 years ago, where less than 10% of Lewiston students had access to computer science instruction. And unfortunately, that's still the case across most of the state, if not most of the country. What we saw at the start of computer science education in Lewiston was many schools across the country would say, okay, we have computer science because we have an AP Computer Science A class, not really talking about what it takes students to get to that point. How are you supporting your female identifying students along the way to make sure they are really strong in those math skills and we don't lose them in math in 7th and 8th grade? What are you doing to make sure that all students, regardless of what language they speak, have access to that content? And so something we're really proud of in Lewiston is that not only do we have a computer science program, the core focus of it is equity and inclusion. It's not simply that you have access to take the class, it's that you're given the skills to succeed in that class.
So these women are educators, computer scientists, CEOs, passionate about women's health. For those in the audience, I'd love for you to start to add, how do you identify who you are and what you're passionate about? And how do you label what you are? And then Melanie, will you please tell us about what you're building here at the Roux Institute?
Absolutely. I'm super excited about it because we are building an institute from scratch. And in my case, it's a research program. I'm a researcher at heart. I like to understand the world and build new things that bring benefit to society. I've been in academia, I've been in industry, I've been in industry research. And what excites me about what we're building here is that it's right at the intersection of all those things. And in that way, it allows us to find real world problems that people in the state of Maine and the area around New England that they care about, that matter to our local businesses and to our community organizations, and then tackle those problems from a research perspective, bringing the brightest minds to bear on the problem. In my case, it's all about data visualization and human-computer interaction. I am passionate about enabling people to work with their data, and that can be everyone, not just the data scientist, but everyone from my grandma to medical doctors to factory workers, everyone who can make use of data in their lives. I want to empower them to do that to their full potential by building tools that make it possible.
And I'll start the next question with you, Melanie, since
Sure.
you're on the hot seat right now. Tell us about an influential position you've held. It can be the current one if you'd like. And what sort of what defines that position and what prepared you for the role?
Yeah, I guess I could go with the current one. It's influential in the sense that I have a lot of autonomy to build this research team from the ground up and to bring in the people who I think will be helpful in building this enterprise. And it's influential in that it's got a strong role in the community, in engaging our partners and community organizations into the research. And so we're sort of influencing outwards as well. I think what prepared me was the diversity of experiences that I've had to date. I didn't just come up through an academic career and stay an academic. I left academia and I experienced industry research, and then I left that and experienced what it's like to actually build software in a software company. And then I went into management and learned all about how to empower a team to do the work that I wasn't directly doing myself. And so it's sort of that diversity of coming from different places and experiencing different things that I think has prepared me for this kind of vast unknown role where, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but that's kind of exciting. And I know I have experiences to draw on to help me get there.
Awesome. Halkin.
I think my answer is in some ways very similar. I feel like I'm always surprised, although I probably shouldn't be at this point, by how everything kind of does fit together in the end. Experiences that feel so divorced in a way from what I'm doing presently, I'll turn around and draw directly from them, even if they were, a decade ago, even if it's just people I know. I feel like one of the things I'm really lucky to have is an amazing network and people who are believers and want to make things a success. They're promoters, right? It's sort of like, what do you need? What can I do? Who can I offer? Who can I connect to? What are the resources you're looking for? As far as feeling ready for anything, I feel like, you have to just trust you're going to figure it out. I feel like I want what I'm doing. I'm driven myself. And so that's what is making me sort of overcome any challenge in the way. I definitely feel like my learning's never done. I try and stay super humble about that. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm voracious about trying to improve skills and gain new knowledge. So I hope to be an even better leader a year, 2 years, 10 years from now. And I feel like my prior leadership experience certainly helps. Everything helps. And as rough as it's been, the hardest things in my career have been the ones that have also taught me the most. As far as knowing success, I'll just use an example from last week. A woman who used to work with me messaged, and she just said that she rocked her salary negotiations because, when I worked with her, I don't think a lot of employers think to mentor in that sense, because there's kind of this awkward thing of like, well, I don't really want to negotiate super hard against my own people. But on the other hand, I'm always transparent about the numbers of my companies. And I was just let her know what we had, but we worked on skills of like how to do it, how to present herself. And, she got her payday, and she felt then the confidence to go and help some other women in her circle. And for me, being in STEM, that's really rewarding because there is substantial gaps. The numbers prove it. And, maybe I've only affected 1, 2, 5 people, but that means a lot to me. And I feel like that's in a way how I measure success, is like the direct human impact. I hope the products I produce also do that. And I believe they have, but it's also the humans who are part of the journey with me, and hopefully leaving them better prepared for whatever comes next in their own lives.
Yeah, and I agree a lot with Helken and Melanie, where that diversity of experiences is really what's prepared me for. I'm in this role, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, but I trust that I can figure it out. And in addition to that, I would say one thing that really helps is learning the art of computational thinking and specifically decomposition. So how do you take a really large problem and break it down into smaller, more digestible bites? And I see that so relevant, especially now, not just in education, but in every interaction that I have, where so many our anxiety is just tapped out from the last 2 years. So how can I, as a leader, as a coordinator, as a project manager, help others break down their own anxiety by taking these really large, seemingly overwhelming problems with whatever they're facing and break it down so that we can start to tackle and make progress towards it.
So it starts to get there, and Alicia, I'll start with you this time. What's some advice you would give women in the field to do that, to find their voice, and also to hold their ground when it comes to what they believe in and what they're trying to do?
The biggest thing, and I know I struggle with this as well, is to stop apologizing for everything. Examine that gut instinct that makes you want to blurt out, "I'm sorry," every time that you're nervous. Stop and ask yourself, what am I actually apologizing for in this moment? Seeing yourself in that light and taking that confidence, and not always saying, "I'm so sorry." Well, what about? Find your voice and follow it.
Alicia, I'm a Canadian. We always say sorry for everything. I'll never forget. But for me, I kind of agree. As women, we often have imposter syndrome. We feel like we don't belong in the role we're in somehow. One of the best pieces of advice I got came from my PhD advisor, who said, "Don't be intimidated. You should not be intimidated to reach for things that might seem pretty high up there. You're every bit as capable as another person who might reach for that job or that role. So just don't be intimidated and go for it."
Yeah, I think that confidence piece is huge. I will say, advice I would give, if I would even give this to myself if I could go back in time, is choose the rooms that you're in. I feel like sometimes I find humans in general do this. You internalize the situation and feel like maybe I can fix it. Maybe I can try harder. Maybe if I articulate this differently, they're going to hear or see or act on the things that I have and the expertise I'm bringing in. And sometimes just the room is the wrong room, and don't take that on yourself, depending on your position in an organization, especially, right? Like, so for me as a leader, that's very easy. I get to create the room. But when you're not, I think it can be incredibly demoralizing, and don't underestimate that you may be frankly in an impossible situation, and that you have to find where you can be effective, and all aspects of your life matter, right? It's not just, is your expertise being valued? Are they executing on your ideas? It's how do you feel, right? If you're miserable, if you're waking up in the middle of the night just from raw stress, like that's not healthy. And I don't personally believe anyone should live like that. I don't want that for anyone. So I would say that pick your rooms. And I know that's kind of it is a privileged point of view to have. So I understand that's not everyone's ability to do that, but probably the second or maybe even the most important advice I would give to myself and others, because I've benefited from it now, is I've created what I call, it's a joke term, but I actually kind of mean it seriously. I have a group of people that I call my personal board of directors. They're really close friends, they're colleagues, former colleagues, and otherwise they're people I deeply trust. And I know they're always in my corner. And rather than just sit alone and ruminate and try and figure out what I should do about a situation, I reach out to them and I run situations by them and I ask for their advice, and I ask it from all of them because they all have different points of view. They all have, they're different people with different backgrounds. And from that, I collectively make decisions on how to move forward. I don't always do it, right? Because sometimes you just need to make quick choices. But I feel like to find your strength, particularly in fields that weren't designed for us, I think having the support of others who aren't directly in your day-to-day, but are really there for you, I at least have found to be critical, and has given me that confidence and given me that ability to really know my strengths and stick with them. So yeah, maybe someone else has a better term, but for me, it's my personal board of directors that I report into and get advice from.
All right, Halkin. So when you go and consult with the board of directors, or Melanie, when your advisor says, think big and go big, tell us about a time when you did make a big change and took a big risk. Where were you in your career, in your life, and why did you need to make that change, and what did you do?
I think for me, it's been, because I'm in startup land, right? I'm in the team creation space. And so I feel like nothing's ever perfect. You deal with very imperfect situations, you deal with a ton of challenges. And it's been disseminating with when you're in a deal breaker situation, right? Am I dealing with a situation I can change? I can power my way through, because I feel like my skill and my strength is my ability to power through situations and always find solutions. But then there's also moments where you have to step back and be like, okay, is this unsolvable? Or is it, is it never going to have the outcome that's actually what I define as success? So for me, it was walking away from a co-founding team that I was a part of. I didn't feel they were moving fast enough. I didn't feel like they were taking appropriate risks. And I felt like they were going to move too slow and miss the moment in the market. And I will say this because I think we have a lot of women on the call. For me, it was a co-founding team with sort of this high profile group of guys who I felt like I could walk into fundraising rooms and do really well with. And at the time I was pregnant with twins, and I felt very not in a great spot to walk into VC rooms and present myself. And so it was like that was definitely like oh my gosh, like this feels like a big and a high risk situation. And it was 100% the right decision to walk away. It did feel big at the time, just because of the life stage I was in and the position I was in. But I learned so much, and I've used those learnings, and I now, go about finding co-founders in a totally different way. I go about approaching ideas and companies in a different way. So I think that's another thing, these big moments over time. Now it's just like a minor line in my career story. It's not central. So that was a great moment where they really helped.
That sounds very familiar to me. I feel like I took a big leap leaving my job at Tableau Software to come join the Roux Institute. I had a team that was amazing. My management chain was excellent. I believed in the products. I was, on the management track, and for all intents and purposes, I had a great job. I was doing really well. And yet I realized if I wanted to advance my career and grow, I needed to actually take a job I didn't know how to do. And that's kind of scary, to kind of take a leap into something new and do something you don't know how to do. But for me, I realized that's how I grow, and that's how I learn new things. And so when the Roux called, I packed up and moved 3,000 miles away to a place I'd never been and took on something new, but it's exciting.
Melanie, I resonate so strongly with that, because I will be upfront. I am a trained 712 social studies teacher currently working as a computer science coordinator. I was the first computer science coordinator in the state of Maine for a couple of years there. And same thing, I had reached a point in my past employer where the upward mobility options weren't what I wanted to do. They weren't what I was passionate about. And when this opportunity presented itself, it was, I think I can figure this out. I know I can manage a project. Can I figure out the coding along the way? Sure, let's go find out. And so every day when I show up to work and I'm still managing this program, it's still there. We're still having our computer science courses. It shows me that risk paid off.
All right, Alicia, I'm also going to put you on the spot to ask for another risk moment, insights into another risk moment. You chose to enroll at Roux, and you've taken on graduate education in addition to your current day job. Why the master's in data science? Why are you doing that now?
From a school perspective, and when I say school, I'm looking at K-12 public sector. I see on a daily basis how much data schools are responsible for, whether that's testing data, whether that's grades. We are just a data warehouse. But usually the only person who's trained even to analyze that data is relegated to the student information system. So when I say that, I mean the individuals who are managing what courses are you going to, what are your grades, what are your attendance? And there's this whole just plethora of information that we could be using to make better decisions or direct our goals. But there aren't that many people in the K-12 space who have that skill set. Now, that being said, even 6 months ago, there were not a lot of data analyst positions in K-12. And even, I think this morning, one popped up in York, Maine. So it's getting there, but I see such a need for it. And I'm in this unique position where it's like, okay, I've been in the classroom, I've managed a product. Now I see what's next, what schools are going to need soon, especially coming out of COVID and the learning loss that happened here. What can I do to start to prepare myself for that next thing?
So it's so interesting because when I invited you all to be on the panel, you know, at Roux we do research, learning, and entrepreneurship. And I thought I'm going to find a great student, a great entrepreneur, and a great researcher, and we'll sort of see where what magic happens. But listening to you all, it's really fascinating. Each of you is creating a new field, right? Whether it's, you know, a focus on data or computer science in the K-12 space, the field of data visualization, you know, women's health, and companies that are focused very keenly on that. You're all creators and builders of new fields. How do you think your upbringing and identity influenced either your ability to see those opportunities or why those opportunities mean so much to you?
I don't mind starting on that one. So for me, my mom's American, my dad was an immigrant to the US. So I know that a lot of myself and my career was shaped around growing up with, you know, immigrant family members around me. I feel like with that, you become, I mean, a couple of things happen. One, growing up between two cultures, you become an observer in many ways, and you notice that some things are just cultural, and you start to question, like, well, why do we do it this way here versus there? And so I feel like learning to ask questions early on, just for me, has served me so well in my career, because you just start to question, well, why is this way? Why does this other thing not exist? And you start to just be able to see the market opportunities that I think takes others time, or they just never see. I also feel like it made me really open-minded. I don't try and make a lot of assumptions. I really like people. My family talked a lot about how they benefited from the kindness of others. And I just feel like that's how I want to be in the world. And I feel like, I don't know if there's any other first geners on the call, but you do grow up with a little bit of guilt of like, okay, they gave me all this opportunity, I better capitalize on this. They made a lot of sacrifices for me to be where I am. And I don't mind that. I mean, they did do a lot, and I feel like I have been able to take it and run with it, and hopefully bring, you know, my lens into rooms that wouldn't otherwise have the perspective I have. And then also I'm always acutely aware of who's missing from rooms, right? So I've been able to get places with my privilege that others haven't. And my deepest desire is to have my kids experience very different rooms than I've been in. And that drives me. And I remember once working with this PR person with one of the companies I was with, and she kept being like, well, what do you get out of all these, you know, and she wanted this like very self-centered motivation for my career and what I'm doing. And I could never find a better way to articulate than this is for future generations. Like, yes, it's for me, but the way I sleep well at night is knowing like I'm doing my absolute most with every minute I have to create change.
And Helken, I see kind of a parallel where my experience or my influence is my mother, who is physically disabled. And I grew up seeing all the ways that people and businesses and organizations either cut corners or just blatantly ignored the accommodations that she needed to simply be in a space. And so having that experience growing up, it cued me into seeing all these inequalities and either having to call them out or figuring out a workaround. And then I learned later, this is really good for teaching because you need to make sure that all of your students can scaffold the material, or that all of your students can access the material in the way that you're presenting it. And then even further, as I started to work with more adult learners, how do we make sure all the people who are in the room need to be there? And I'll take Lewiston Public Schools, for example, where we have a very, very fun population. There are so many different languages and so many different cultures represented in Lewiston. When I make a computer science class or when I'm hosting it, when I'm working with a teacher, I need to make sure that our spaces are reflective of our student body. So similar, making sure the people who need to be at that table are not just there, but also have the tools they need to succeed.
It's super interesting to hear you both talk about your upbringing and how that kind of influenced your thinking about things. I think about my dad because he had a super weird and interesting career. That kind of inspired me in a way, right? My dad did a double major in accounting and commerce, and straight out of school, he got kind of, every accounting major's dream job at a national bank. And so he went there and he was all excited. And after a while, he realized that he hated it. He hated being in a city. He hated wearing a suit every day. He hated the work. And so he quit and he went and became a park ranger. And then after a number of years as a park ranger, he realized that, his hours were odd. He wanted to spend more time with his family. So he went back to school and then he went into child protection services. So he is just like really all over the map. And watching his career made me realize that you don't have to stick with one thing. You can take what you learned from one place and kind of shift and change and apply it somewhere else. And so it helps me not be afraid to take the leap when those opportunities to do different things come my way.
So I'm going to move into getting questions from the audience. And I've had a couple people who've been texting me questions to prime the pump, and one fits as the perfect follow-up, Melanie, to your story about your dad, and and not being afraid to make big changes. Question is, have you ever left a role or company after less than a year? As women, we often feel a lot of guilt in our decisions and feel like we have to explain ourselves all the time. If you've done this, how did you handle it? And if you haven't, how would you give someone advice on how to handle it?
I can talk to that. Answer is yes. I feel like the storytelling aspect of your career is really important. It's important for you to know where the threads are. And I think Alicia talked about this, not to be apologetic. I think if you have good sound reasons for not being in a situation and you explain where the benefits are, I think the only concern an employer ever has when they see a short stint like that is, I hope they don't come on board and then leave me quickly. So if you get ahead of that with a story and explain why that's not going to be a repeat act, I think you've already addressed the only fear I can think of they're having with that situation. And I also feel like that the advice of, sticking a job for 2 years and stuff, that I at least feel like that's changing. I am in a very specific sector of employment, like the startup scene. It's more about, who's willing, able, and going to roll up their sleeves and who's passionate about what you're doing. It's probably one of the most forgiving industries in a way of that, especially because out on the West Coast, I see resumes all the time that just have 11, 12 month stints rotating in them. But I do feel like get confident in your story. And, I try to not say negative things where possible and just focus on the positive and just know why your answer matters to the other party, right? Like you have your own story that matters for you, but really all the employer wants to know is, are you going to stick with our team? And I would just get ahead of that and articulate that.
That was so well put. Yes.
I agree. I also, I've worked in both large organizations and small organizations. And I also think the thing to remember in a large organization is there's lots of jobs out of that organization. And if you're unhappy in one, the organization wants to keep you. So figure out another one that you might want and try and make the move internally. So I got another question here for you. And anybody who wants to jump in, jump in. What keeps you going when the roadblocks ahead seem almost impossible to get over?
I'm going to borrow from Helkin's term and having our own board of having your own board of directors, both professionally and personally. So you need to have someone at work that you know you can go to and outside of work to give you that outside perspective. And so for me, identifying those people early on, they're part of the reason what keeps me going. And then I'm very fortunate in my role that I can get an immediate feedback to why I do what I do. I drive down to a school, step into a classroom, it's like, oh, this physical thing exists. There are students learning here and they are excited about the content. They are getting math concepts that they struggled with for so long. You put a robot in their hand and then it clicks. And so if you have a way to make that instant gratification in some way in your career, that's really powerful to overcome all the other things that come with it.
Yeah, I think you gave a really good example of what I was thinking, which is mission, right? I feel like I need to have a mission in my work. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm doing. And reminding myself of that mission, I'm doing this to build an institute. I'm doing this for the state of Maine, right? That's what keeps me going when things get super busy and there's 1,000 things to do and I'm not sure where to focus. It's like, well, pick something that helps me on my mission.
Yeah, I think I would just offer that I think I used the term, pick the room you're in earlier. So too, if something feels truly impossible, in a way, be selfish. I mean, you matter, right? Like if you are feeling miserable and unable to navigate a situation, like it matters how you feel and it matters that you can live your life and be healthy. And, maybe those aren't roadblocks that are worth going around or over. Maybe it's just a whole new, maybe you literally need to just turn around and go a different direction. And I also would say, not to get too philosophical, but I listened to a podcast on Buddhism that I really like, and they were talking about aimlessness. And the concept there is actually to let feelings in, and then they reside for a shorter time within you. So if you're feeling this feeling of impossibility and you're trying to ward it off and like constantly solution find and push, like it might actually mentally be better just to sit back and be like, okay, what if this all falls apart? What if I can't do this? And actually let yourself go there, whether alone or with a friend or confidant, because I sometimes feel like that's where the right choice emerges. It either becomes clear, like, oh, there is a path here. I just needed to sit in this moment of feeling like defeat or impossibility, or becomes clear, like, yeah, why am I trying to solve this? Let me go somewhere else. So at least for me, that's proven helpful.
So I love this question that Liz posed in the chat, and I want to frame it in bringing it back. The tagline of Women Who Empower comes from an initiative that was started by one of the most senior women at Northeastern University. And it's a whole set of programs around elevating women across the university, our students, our alumni, our faculty. But I love the turn of phrase, because it's about the women that we highlight, but it's also about empowering others. And so Liz's question in that theme is, how do you think about making change in the workplace and making it easier for the people who follow you? And what are the ways that you see that play out?
I think initially you need to be in the space. If we're talking about science and we're talking about tech, I mean, I am a biracial female in the technology space, and being there, leading the way, as hard as it may be, if others can see you there first, it provides inspiration to follow in your footsteps. And then from my perspective, the more people that I can support and encourage to bring along the way, that helps build my network. So it's mutually supportive for both of us.
For me, I do it in mentorship. I do a lot of mentorship. And so that's giving of time, and hopefully, whether it's just support or actual expertise that I can lend in, I have benefited from that a lot. And I think sometimes my mentors don't even know. It's been as simple as just like, you know, great job that they text me or something like that. It's unbelievable how small statements can really shift your confidence and your ability to keep doing what you're doing. So, you know, changing the rooms. I mean, I definitely think when I've had, you know, companies, we've created rules like, you know, you can't go on a panel unless you demand that at least, you know, some percentage of the speakers, you know, be diverse and things like that. Just to use your presence and your authority and your influence in situations where you can, while also be cognizant that, you know, the burden should be on those with the most privilege in those situations. So, you know, I think it's a pretty imperfect process, but I think it's just constantly being aware and figuring out where you can raise your voice and make change, knowing that you're not going to be everyone's friend for that. I mean, that part's tough, right? You know, I definitely don't see change makers getting applauded a lot, but I think the work is necessary, and I think there's ways to do it, and also to not do it alone. I think it's also figuring out who are your tactical partners to make this change, right? Like, this isn't anti anyone, this is pro everyone, right? People actually want equality, they want the ability to have equity. So I think having a personal mindset and also personal boundaries, right? Like, we're human, like you need to be able to rest, you need to be able to regroup and do what you do. So I at least for me, mentoring has been a big one, but also, you know, small pieces I can do in my day-to-day practice as well.
I 100% agree with what Alicia and Helken have said here. The only thing I'd add is that once you take on a leadership role, some of it is just sort of living the culture that you want around you, right? Because people take their cues from you all of a sudden, and the small things that you do, whether it's, you know, being on your laptop in a meeting or not calling out when you hear something that's potentially discriminatory, you know, all those little tiny actions that you do lead the way that, you know, others emulate that behavior.
So we had a good question from Susan, which I'm going to translate into my own words. Apologies, Susan, ahead of time, but I love it. So her question is really about, you know, on your personal board of directors, who are the men? So I'm going to twist that a little bit and saying, like, who, you know, talk about a man that has helped you, and maybe translate it into, how do you think that men should think about mentoring and elevating women?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch. And sort of the rule for me, at least so far, the way it's plays out is if it's a cishet white guy, the help they give me is free. They don't take equity in my company. They give me their time, advice, and all of their connections. So I have some real rock stars that are absolutely amazing. They're huge fans. And I make sure they know from day one, this isn't adversarial at all. It's just, let's do this together. And they totally see the buy-in. They're like, I want this for my daughters. I want this for my wife. I want this for whoever else in their life. And I feel like that's been something I've learned. I don't necessarily feel like I entered this with that mastered, but it's just inviting them in. Like, this is for all of us. Like, let's do this together. And I think it's really for any mentor in your life, having them understand how they can help you. People fundamentally want to help each other. I love that about people. And I think sometimes making your ask clear. I think there was a question about someone trying to build their network in Maine. I think people in Maine are generally very friendly, and it just make your ask clear. Like, I want to meet others. Could you introduce me to 3 people that you think would be valuable? Either live in my town or they're in my professional field or whatever intersection you think there could be. So yeah, for the men, I mean, I'm all there for their help, and they are there and they're amazing. Some of them I can text any hour of the day and they're getting right back to me, and I make sure they know it. I think gratitude's a really important practice in life in general, and I try and make sure they know that yeah, I try and thank people as much as possible, and them especially, because I think sometimes they wonder, like, is this helpful? Is this really what you need? And so I make sure they know, like, yes, it's very helpful. And thank you for doing that.
To build off of Helken, similarly, male, female, male identifying female, whatever your flavor, if you're in my board of directors, you have to be an ally. And it's okay if you say the wrong thing, as long as you're willing to learn from it. The only exclusivity I have is if you're not a lifelong learner, if you're always looking to improve, then I don't need that energy. But if you're willing to learn and willing to help, not just me, but help others come up behind you, then yes, absolutely. And to speak to the networking question, there's the beauty of Maine is that we are so small. We are not populace-wise a big state. So once you meet a few key people, like people on this call, you are suddenly tapped into such a larger network of this industry.
So well said, thank you. I just have to say hats off to my husband, who's done what women did for years and has continually sacrificed his career for mine. I kind of feel guilty about that, actually. And I would like us to find a way that that doesn't have to happen, but you know, absolutely. Men in our lives are important.
Yeah, the team we build is very important. I want to ask you guys a question related to the mission of Roux, the Roux Institute. What do you hope for Maine in the next 5 years? And I was going to ask you, how do you want to contribute to it? But also maybe how do you want the other folks on the call, the other panelists, but also the audience? What would you like for the state in 5 years, and how would you like us all to contribute to it?
I'm excited about what Alicia's doing because I want our young people graduating high school and college to feel empowered to take on any career, and especially careers in STEM. And to be able to do so in Maine.
Yeah, I feel like my kids will probably want to leave state, but I'm secretly hoping that the networks we're all building here will keep them here and I can hang out with my kids all the time. But I think for me, for Maine, I feel like there's been fundamental changes that I've seen in the last 5 years, and I can only hope the next 5 hold as many. And I feel like there's been these great bursts of energy and innovation, and I can feel them starting to connect. And then my hope in the 5 years is they continue to coalesce and move things forward. Events like this are part of that, in my belief. I also feel like there has been and continues to be a shift to more like promotional sponsorship for innovation on entrepreneurship. I mean, that's my where I work and where I focus my attention. So I hope it's in a lot of sectors, but you know, I feel like asking entrepreneurs, what do you need, versus necessarily being conservative in a mindset, right? Like there's a lot of extremely talented, capable people in Maine. We may not all know each other. A lot of us, I was one of them, lived here for a decade and was working for companies out of state, right? And so I feel like, you know, forming the connections, I'm hoping that we just see this momentum growing, and that we birth some really great companies, and you know, that feeds, right? You know, graduates of the Roux, you can move into companies directly here, and I think this is the beginning of that. And I'm excited to see the next 5 years.
Similarly, with the connectivity of Maine, I don't need Southern Maine to be the other Maine or the rest of Maine, and I'm hoping that the connections that we're starting to build reduce that divide between how the rest of the state sees the 295 corridor. And one way I'm really passionate about changing that perspective, and one thing I really want to see change for anyone who's in education, whether it's K-12, graduate, undergraduate, or even just in mentorship positions, can we please abandon the sage on the stage model? That's not how you build connection. That's not how you build repertoire with students. And so what I would really love to see is us moving more towards innovative, back and forth, making connection with who we're teaching, and not just a dry 40-minute lecture with the PowerPoint being delivered at you.
I love that. Alicia knows this, but I worked in K-12 for many, many years. And that was where I spent the last 5 years of my K-12 experience, was getting rid of the sage on the stage in lots of ways. And certainly at Northeastern, you know, we really, really value experiential learning and project-based learning, and hope that we can all share practices in that, so that it becomes much more of the dominant pedagogy out there. So we have 2 minutes, and I want to end on time. So I'm going to encourage everybody on the call, if you're interested, to put your LinkedIn link in this chat. This is about building a network and learning from each other. So it'd be interesting to see who's on the call and allow people to connect with one another. I think that's a good way to do it. And then want to end with I'm going to end with a quick whip around question, which is who's somebody that inspired you, somebody that you think of as your hero, and why?
For me, it was definitely my aunt. She immigrated here, didn't know any English, and she's sadly passed on, but even in her 70s and 80s, she was always learning, and she signed herself up for a computer science class at the local community college because she wanted to know how computers work, and she's just total badass. And I loved her, and she cooked the best food, but it was just, she just never doubted. She was just one of those constant cheerleaders. Well, like, of course you can do it. Of course you should do it. And it was one of those figures in my life that was like just total embodiment of love. And I always think of her because she went through a lot, and she just always had the best attitude about everything.
I'm meeting so many cool people on a regular basis that I feel that my hero changes week to week. But right now, my hero is someone who I would dream to meet, and it's chemist Dr. Rachel Burks out of American University. And I will do a shameless plug. If you have not seen the documentary Picture a Scientist, she is phenomenal, and I am so inspired by the work that she does.
It's so hard to pick one, Margaret. But I guess if I had to, one of the people who's inspired me was a former boss who was just so incredibly good at figuring out what was going on in a social situation and detangling all of the issues and making sure that everything got resolved. That all of the kind of personal conflicts that come into work, she was just brilliant at helping the team come together and get through those little issues. And so she was kind of inspirational in learning how to manage social situations and social tensions at work.
Well, it's 101, so we're going to wrap up. I've really enjoyed getting to know the three of you a little bit better, and thank you so much for bringing your whole selves to the conversation today. I'll end on, as Alicia said, it's a small state. I heard once that, we're a small town with long roads. And so I do feel as though we have a lot to contribute as a network to building up the state. And I'm just really grateful for all of you, the work you do, and for being part of this community. And we welcome everyone to connect through the LinkedIn links. We would love your feedback on this, as with all of our speaker series, on how this went, but also what else you'd like to see. I'm going to chalk this up as my favorite hour of the year, to just get to talk to fantastic women. So thank you all for participating, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.